Maybe here a preamble to the start of the meeting. I would just like to introduce Eric Hubert to everyone. He's joined us through what may evolve into like a youth committee or something anyway. Sabra Charlesworth had talked to me months ago about the idea of getting involved with the schools, the high schools and so on, and contacting some of the students. Eric responded, and here he is. We had a Zoom meeting, Sabra and Eric and myself, yesterday, and we've got to meet Eric finally face to face, so to speak. So he's interested in the club. This is his first Zoom meeting with us, and I think it's a really nice idea that Sabra had, and she's done quite a bit of work with emails through the teachers, introducing this idea through the teachers actually, so the students were able to get wind of it. So it could be the start of something more. So the try to get a few more young folks involved in the club. So thanks for coming on, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for
inviting. Glad to have you. Right on.
Good to be here.
Good to have you.
Can you see?
Where's Richard?
And hopefully Sabra will make it too. I don't know, Sabra here?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can hear me.
I'll just talk a little preamble then, Jim. I might as well get started a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
David, take over.
Yeah, there we go. Well, anyway, thanks. Welcome to our first May Zoom meeting here. We've got another one in 2 weeks, I guess. That'd be the 23rd or so. Am I right about that? Anyhow, we've got some folks from overseas again. We always invite the Viva guys across. And we've got some on that flat piece of land between this side of Winnipeg. There's guests and folks coming from the prairies there, which is always exciting. They are, we have, I believe, Mark Croker and Matthew Pointer from the Saskatchewan EBA. Is that right?
Yeah, we also have Jerry Lynn Nixon here.
Oh, okay, Jerry Lynn, welcome. Actually, at the top, I'd like to thank Jim Henshaw for helping set all this up. He does all the work, kind of organizing everything for our marketing. And Glenn Gary's in the wings in case we need some backup. And he's always got good answers, and he's a great resource and heads up a lot of our committees and is the club secretary. James Locke has joined us today, and I see Lisa's with him too in the room. Hi, Lisa. It's just great to see James. He's a busy man, of course, and being down there in confrontational Tesla land, California, it's always great to see that, hear that perspective. So we'll get to you a little bit, James, sorry. I'll just continue on with these little introductions. So we have the Saskatchewan EBA folks, and we'd like to just hear what it's all about going on in your part of the world, anything you've got to add. And then we have Kent Rathwell, who's joining us to talk about some different ideas. He's the Sun Country Highway Charger dude. And Kent and I met back in 2012, early 2012 at the bakery. He brought his Tesla Roadster from, I don't know where he came from. It was some godforsaken place. But anyway, it was awesome to see him. And he showed up the bakery at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he gave test rides till almost 9 at night. And we had a parking lot full of people. And I don't know if it was that visit or the next one. He had a V-Trucks, electrified truck there, and we had people lined up with checks already signed, ready to buy these trucks, because we got a lot of tradesmen out in this part of the city. So that demand, I think, is maybe still there, eh?
That demand.
So Kent will talk to us a bit later as well. So maybe, because James, I think you have to leave in an hour or so, don't you? Did I get that correct?
No, I'm good. I'm good for a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can start with you. If you want to just say hi and update us on whatever is on your mind, that'd be great. Take it away.
Yeah, we're Lisa and I here in sunny California, and been keeping really busy. Both Lisa and I have been full-time busy even with the lockdown, because my IT business actually got busier, as you can all imagine, with people working from home. And then Lisa with JPL, they moved to remote work as well. So, I mean, we've been in lockdown for how many weeks now? When did it lock
Since
down here?
mid-March.
Mid-March. So not much going on here in terms of EV front, like in terms of events or anything like that, much like everyone else. But as you all know, Twitter's been entertaining for that front, as Elon has done again today with his latest tweets. Some personal news. We're getting some good news is Tesla Solar, Tesla Energy is coming next week for us. So we're getting our 11.3 kilowatt solar array and 4 power walls installed next Wednesday. So I'll share with that. They're contacting me today to give me, touch base, and it's going to be a touchless install. That's going to be interesting. So we don't need to interact with them. We just have to open the garage, get out of the way, and let them go.
What's it?
Yeah, well, that's when you go and meet with them outside, I guess. And so that'll be fun this week. Because one thing we have lots of right now is sun. We had record temperatures last week at 39 degrees C here, so toasty already.
Yeah, the AC turns on at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock in the morning, our AC's running. So we're looking forward to get some solar installed. Other than that, I'm just looking, great to see everybody. It's been way too long. Time's flying by too fast. Hopefully I can join more of these meetups, and looking forward to hearing everybody today.
You're muted, David.
Yeah, Dave, you're muted.
Would you like me to unmute that?
You're good now.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to the power wall. We have 16 panels in our yard, and I tried to get that in the background. But four power walls, what?
We're actually we have a referral power wall. The system comes free, and the referral one, they're just installing it because it's free. So we're going to end up with 4. So we're going to have, I think we figured it out, we're going to have over 200,000 kilowatt hours of storage in our garage with the 2 Teslas and 4 power walls.
Oh, that's awesome.
200
60, 100.
200 kilowatt hours.
And then,
Yeah.
You'd mentioned that you're not doing many activities. We've had a couple of drive-bys. I know Glenn Gary, I think he's done more than one. I was a part of one where we went to the hospital at shift change, 7 p.m. and we honked our horns and banged things. We joined other people there, a variety of people who were there to do the same. Even the bus driver who had pulled up by the curb where he waits for his route turnaround was in the driveway of the thing, honking on a horn and yelling and screaming. So it was pretty neat. It just lasted for a few minutes, but there was about 8 of us one day, EVs. So that was neat. So we've been doing that kind of thing. Minimal bus.
Yeah, there was some talk of doing that here, but with the social distancing and the population density of California, we kind of decided to not do it because Santa Clarita Sheriff said that is considered going against social distancing on Twitter. Yeah, so it's kind of like a balancing act here with the population.
It was just sort
of
the
police did it.
A random act. All of a sudden down our street there were police.
We have to close your windows and turn on your HEPA filters.
That's right.
Good. That's great. Well, feel free to dive in, James, as we go on, and Lisa, we'd love to hear more. Why don't we switch to our friends in Saskatchewan and hear what you guys have to say. I'm not sure how you want to present it, but fire away.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you very much for inviting us to be a part of this massive conversation. This is awesome to see so many people online and people from all over North America, actually. So that's really cool. My name's Matt. I'm the founder of the Saskatchewan Electric Vehicle Association. We got started around 2 years ago, became incorporated as a nonprofit organization, and we've since organized about 4 larger events. We typically do Drive Electric Earth Day and National Drive Electric Week. Obviously, with the way things have been so far this year, we had to change gears and not go for the deed. We decided to do an electric vehicle Earth Day rally, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. And it was an event with no social interaction. We basically just all hopped in our cars, staged in a parking lot, and then we traveled around the city to support healthcare workers. So we drove past both of our hospitals here, gave them a wave and a toot of the horn, and then anybody who entered their vehicle also contributed $20 per vehicle towards our local food bank here in the city. So we've been, just like everybody else, trying to get creative behind the scenes with this virus and stuff out there. And yeah, we've been laying pretty low otherwise. Yeah, just because we're just getting started here, we're just starting to form relationships with governments. Sask Power here is the main power provider, so we've had a ongoing relationship with them now for about a year or so. They've decided to sponsor us here for 2020. Yeah, and so we're putting some bugs in their ear as far as charging infrastructure and education and those kinds of things. So yeah, we're plugging away here as best as we can, and we're definitely looking to reach out to other groups that are larger than ours, to kind of learn from some of your experiences and, figure out kind of the best way for us to kind of move our organization forward and stuff. So that's about all I got to say. Mark or Geraldine, if you guys have anything to add.
No, I'm fairly new to the club. My wife and I actually don't even own an EV yet. Of course, the dog starts barking now. Sorry about that. One second. So, yeah, we started with a solar array for our acreage. We live on 10 acres here in southeast Saskatchewan near Estevan. And yeah, I don't know. We're looking forward to getting a Model Y here, hopefully later this year. And then, yeah, so that's just about myself, I guess. I'm fairly new to the club, so just learning the ropes.
Hi, I'm Geraldine. I'm the secretary for the Saskatchewan Electric Vehicle Association. I've owned a Nissan Leaf for, it'll be 3 years in October. So I drive it all the time to work. I'm a shift worker too, so I have even posted a video of me, like my car parked overnight on the coldest night of the year and starting it, because that's the main question I seem to get is, how does it work in the winter? Does it start okay? And that, so, but that's a little bit about me. I've been with the SEVA for since I finally joined the board in, I think, December. So, but we're like doing good, I think, overall. Anyways, thank you.
Yeah, we're up against a significant amount of myths and misconceptions here in this province. There's a lot of ignorant people here. So that's why we're trying to focus when things come back online here with some good educational stuff for the general public, just getting people out to see the cars and just talking about them in the media as best we can. So we've been pretty lucky. There's been a lot of focus on the cars here from the media over the last year or so. And actually, one of our regional groups, the Tesla Owners of Saskatchewan, the Tyler Krause from Saskatoon, he was actually featured in Tesla Ratty. And they were talking about how demanding our weather is here and how crazy it gets and how our electric vehicles run so awesome when it's minus 45-degree weather. A lot of people actually don't believe it. So we're kind of proof that these cars will work anywhere. And so we're happy to show them. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of our update, I guess, from Saskatchewan.
That's awesome. Does maybe we could get some questions for you folks? Anybody interested in asking a question?
Just a point, everybody, you need to unmute yourself to ask questions because I've got you on mute all, but go ahead, just unmute yourself and join in.
Nope, can't see me. So I have a question for the Saskatchewan folks. How cold is too cold?
Well, it's too cold. Well, I've had my car out when it was minus 50 degrees with the wind chill, and it still ran pretty darn good. Most of my neighbors were boosting their cars, if not getting a tow truck to be dragged somewhere else to where the car might start, and I was able to go amongst my day. On average, like when it does get really cold, about minus 30 or colder, I'll probably lose about 34% of my battery, of my overall range, I guess, with my Model 3.
Listen to that, and I'll give you a shout.
And then obviously as it warms up, it gets easier and easier from there. But overall, it's a great car. Like I used to drive a Subaru, and I thought that was the best winter car ever. And my Tesla Model 3 is far superior than that in lots of ways. Drive it all the time to go skiing, go snowboarding, drive to BC all the time to go to Fernie. And now that the superchargers on the Trans-Canada Highway are up and running, it makes that trip much, much easier. So,
a follow up for Geraldine, though. You have a Leaf, is that right, Geraldine?
Yes, I do.
So the owner's manual, as I recall, says don't leave it out below a certain temperature for a prolonged period of time. How long have you left it out, in extremely cold weather, or do you have a heated garage, or what's the nighttime situation?
Well, up to just recently, I was working night shifts, so my Leaf was in front of the long-term care facility I work in for about 8 hours. So, and at home, we have a garage, but it doesn't hold our Leaf. We just keep it plugged in the winter, pretty much, when we're home. What?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. I have one question, actually, quick, about being in Saskatchewan. I understand if you're in the city, one of the bigger cities, that would be not unlike what I do. On Vancouver Island, we often don't go very far, so a smaller range. My 2011 Leaf is great for all the needs around town. I was just curious, though, do you find yourself traveling, 100, 200 kilometers regularly? Like, how do your driving habits work? You're mainly in short distance environment.
I can speak to that one if you want, Matt. I'm in Estevan, Saskatchewan, which is about 230 kilometers southeast of Regina. We're actually about 5 miles off the American border ourselves here. And yeah, quite often we are, just to go to Regina, if we want to do a day trip, which is about 2 hours and 20 minutes drive, we have to travel both ways. So it's a 4.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
If we're doing a day trip. And yeah, that's one of the reasons we have waited to this point to buy an EV myself, is because of the distance, which is why we kind of are waiting for the Model Y, and because it has the longer range, which is super important for us. Another thing a lot of people don't think of too, as I live not in the city, on an acreage, is having something that can handle driving on a grid road, because we have drifts in the winter. And my understanding is Jim's from Swift Current, so he may understand a little bit what that's like. So yeah, driving through winter conditions is making sure we had something that was not only going to work for our family of 4, but also something that can make it to Regina and back if we need to do that trip. And quite often we go to Saskatoon, which is over 600 kilometers for us. So yeah, it was really important to have something that can travel long distance.
This is Don in Vancouver. Yeah. I drove my Kona across Canada and spent a month in Swift Current, and did make the drive. For business, I had to get from Swift Current to Saskatoon, and I went up to Saskatoon. I found the infrastructure in Saskatchewan had developed at a point last summer where it was pretty easy to drive around Saskatchewan. I've got the 400 plus kilometer range, and I was impressed with the state of things in Saskatchewan. I went to St. John's and back, and on my way back, the Petro-Canada stations were starting to open up, including the one in Swift Current was open there, which wasn't open when I was there originally. But I found it pretty easy to get around the pretty large areas of Saskatchewan, and it's only getting better. Yeah, of course, I do have a 400 kilometer plus range car.
Yeah, there's been a tremendous amount of change here.
I do have a question. Where we are actually planning to do a trip out to Saskatchewan. I'm in Vancouver, and I have a Nissan Leaf Plus range, and so we had planned to come out in August to do a road trip, stay at some of the campgrounds and RV, sites for plugging in. I just want to know if you have any experiences with some of the I think the national park has a few spots there, and some of the provincial parks, if it was easy to find, or if there's any concerns with finding charging while I'm there.
Me personally, I've never charged at any of the provincial parks for the most part, so I wouldn't be the greatest resource for information on that. I unfortunately just have to maybe direct you to PlugShare to kind of check things out online through the app, or even maybe phone the campgrounds themselves. But I know now from my experience last September, like my dad happened to buy a Model 3 last year, and we drove all the way to San Francisco to the Tesla factory in Fremont there, and we were just on the tail end of all of the new Petro-Canada chargers that were coming online. So that made a big difference for us being able to get out of Saskatchewan, because at that point the supercharger network hadn't been fired up yet in Saskatchewan. It only came online towards the end of December. So I think now with those Petro-Canada stations coming online as well, there's talk Federated Co-op. They've actually put in an application with NRCan, and they're going to be delivering 11 more level 3 fast chargers in Saskatchewan that they've applied for. So we've been really lucky over the last year, considering I think we only have about 300 electric vehicles total in our province. We're getting a significant amount of infrastructure because we're sort of piggybacking on what a lot of the bigger centers are doing. And if somebody's going right across Canada, fortunately for us, they're going to fill in some of the spaces here in between. So
I did use a few of the parks, provincial and federal parks, but mostly, unless they're on PlugShare with a level 2, I would just pay for a service site and plug in with the RV. And mostly all I was getting, the RVs use that, it's just a 110 30 amp plug, but I didn't have an adapter for that. I just plugged into 110 in most of the campsites I used, and I could put on, if I was there from 7 at night till 9 in the morning or something, a little over 12 hours, I would get close to 100 kilometers of range added on my car, which didn't hurt, but wasn't getting me across the country.
I'd like to say thank you to Kent Rass. I'll take this opportunity, Kent. I live in Victoria. I've been to Toronto and back twice in the last 3 years, and your free Sun Country chargers are an absolute blessing. You did a huge job getting us all going early on, and it's really nice to be able to say thank you to you. Wonderful stuff you did for us all.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely, I have to echo that. Of course, I wanted the level 3 chargers most of the time, but I used a lot of Sun Country chargers, and they were great.
I have a question.
Echo that as well.
Yeah.
We'd
I
have
have a
never
question.
made it both ways across Canada in 2015 without Sun Country Highway, that's for sure.
Yeah, and without the Sun Country chargers, I can honestly say I don't know if there'd be any electric vehicle owners in Saskatchewan, because for the longest time, that was all we had, right? I mean, if you're charging at home and only drove to work every day, that's fine, I guess. But there'd be zero long distance travel for the last 5 years or longer without a Sun Country. So yeah, thanks Kent. That's a big step for us here, for sure.
I've got a question for Siva. And it's sort of with regards to municipal and provincial attitudes. Have you seen any change over the last few years about how they approach you, or how approachable they are when you come to them to talk about structure and doing things for EVs?
Yeah, so on the municipal level here in Regina, we've noticed there's been a couple significant motions made with our local city council just regarding charging infrastructure and autonomous vehicles and things like that. I think at the time they didn't realize what they're getting themselves into, and I think they almost regretted making those motions, because now all the local groups, including ours and the environmentalists, are holding their feet to the fire for these motions that they made, and they've been trying to backpedal on that somewhat significantly. We are lucky though that we do have a couple city councilors here that do drive electric vehicles and seem to be pro EV. Now on the provincial side of things, it is a completely different ballgame. I honestly think right now the only reason why Sask Power is really catering to us and really wanting to have discussions with us is because they want to sell more power. I think if it were up to our provincial governments here, they would really want nothing to do with us. We've been trying for over a year now to get a meeting with the Minister of Environment here in Saskatchewan. Formerly, our Minister of Environment came from private industry, the oil and gas industry. So he's not overly motivated to speak with us, unfortunately, at this point. Hopefully in the future, we can get those kinds of meetings set up with them. But right now, we're just trying to boost our relationship as best we can with SaskPower. They're really wanting to look at things more of an education perspective and try to get as many of the myths and misconceptions out of the way as possible. Just because, you know, in our cold environment here, there's probably 80% of the people that we bump into at our rallies and stuff, they all say, that's a really nice car, but it's not going to work in wintertime. What do you normally drive in the winter? Do you drive a jacked up F-150? And we said, well, no, I drive this year round. And so, yeah, anyway, to summarize, municipally on the city level, things have been fairly progressive for EVs, and they're getting better. Obviously not as progressive as bigger centers elsewhere in Canada, but we're working on that. And then with our provincial governments, you know, we're in a tough spot. We had a pipeline convoy, United We Roll, come through here. I believe it was last fall or 2 falls ago, and they shut down the entire city of Regina to have a pipeline party, basically. And meanwhile, if anybody stands up here for the solar industry or anything else, basically your cars get towed and you get tickets or whatever. So
Keep at it.
It's a real strange balance we have here in Saskatchewan. So
yeah, keep at it. There's lots of different approaches and tactics that can be made, and if we can help you in any way, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for us, and it's been great for us to ride a lot of other provinces' coattails, just to kind of say, well, you heard about what they're doing in Alberta, right? Like Alberta's the Texas of Canada, basically. And even they are, you know, adopting a lot of more charging infrastructure. And then you look at BC and Ontario and Quebec, and, you know, the amount of stuff that's going on there is incredible. And so I think the sense that they're getting dragged into this kicking and screaming is probably fairly relevant. They don't want to look like the laggards, even though it's maybe not the industry that they want to be so much involved in, right? We've still got all our ducks in the oil and gas basket right now. So. But yeah, we're all ears to hear any sort of recommendations or any sort of advice that you guys are willing to give us. Absolutely.
That's a very unfulfilling basket they have their dedication and their money into. It's not going to work out very well.
No.
But also here in Saskatchewan, we also have issues with dealerships too, being able to bring in the electric vehicles as well. So that's another thing we're kind of dealing with. So
yeah, just out of curiosity, in BC, does every single Nissan dealer sell the Nissan Leaf that you're aware of, or in lower BC?
Yeah, I think so.
Got an answer?
Yeah.
I think in general, yes. I think some of them more aggressively than others, but I think you can buy one through any dealer.
Okay, because I think we've got 3 or 4 different Nissan dealerships here, but only one of them sells a Nissan Leaf in Saskatchewan. And so that's an issue. A lot of these dealers just don't bring in the cars, and so they think, well, there's no one asking for them, so we're not going to bring them in, right?
I think a lot could be similar. Could be said about the Chevy Bolt too. The Chevy dealers aren't really dealing any of the electric or even the hybrids.
Somebody once suggested that once upon a time the Nissan dealers were required to bring in a Nissan Leaf, and then they took that requirement away. So what I sort of see happening now is the Nissan dealers, even in BC, don't seem to be bringing in a lot of cars. The other thing apparently that's happened is with the regulations that are happening in other parts of the world, companies like Nissan are moving a lot of their cars to Europe and places like that, where there's requirements to have the cars. So they're an easier sale there. So, you know, nobody's fighting uphill. With that said, the beginning of March, Tesla, well, they still had a factory running up until the 23rd, was delivering roughly 50 cars on a Saturday here in Vancouver and another 50 cars on a Sunday. These are Model 3s. So these things are just, you know, Tesla doesn't have a demand problem. They have a production problem.
I guess to add to my point, or to that point, I test drove a Kona about a week and a half ago as part of our rally. Loved the car. I thought it was great. My only personal issue with it, it's not big enough for our family of four. But anyway, the sales guy I was talking to there in Regina was telling me he can't bring them in fast enough. He sells them as soon as he gets them, basically. He just can't get them. So.
It's Jason here. If I can just add a few points about the Nissan. We just got a second used Leaf pre-owned 2017 that was imported from Washington State. So what we found is that some of the dealerships that are further away from the city may have a better supply. Some of them will have them on display, but that's something to look at is some of the imports that are available from south in the States.
There's a guy called Waterhouse Motors out of Portland who was on the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association call, and he's actually come up and talked to us. He's just outside of Portland, and he just finished buying 20 Fiat 500Es, and he's been selling Nissan Leafs for a while, and Chevrolet Bolts and Chevrolet Volts. So he's doing that. There's a dealership in Port Moody, which is outside of Vancouver, called Westwood Honda. And at one time, they were selling 30 electric vehicles they brought in from the United States every month when the border was open and you could bring lots of stuff in. So once that border opens up again, there's some people to talk to try and bring in some stock.
Yeah. I went down to Plaid Automotive just outside of Portland in a place called Milwaukee, and he's even got a site for Canadians on his website. And I wrote up a piece on how to import an electric vehicle on your own. And he has posted some of that up, a summary of that on his website to help Canadians do it. But our Nissan dealer here in Victoria campus, probably up until, I think the new generation of Leafs are selling at a higher volume than the original ones were. They got getting them in more. But he always has 20 to 25 used Leafs that are imported from the States on his lot. And they, at one point, I understood that for every new Leaf he sold, they sold 10 imported Leafs. And they're making a fortune off these from a good markup on the things too. So, but it's really been a good service for people in Victoria and on the island that we have a Nissan dealer who's very active in bringing in cars. And he's got some competition with Motorize, who does the same thing. And now several other dealers are doing the same thing as well. One of the GM dealers is bringing in EVs from the US, and a big used car dealer here, Galaxy, is also bringing it in. So there's no shortage of used EVs available in the Victoria market.
I will here.
Oh, sorry.
There's actually, we just, we helped launch the world's first zero-emission electric vehicle car share in Saskatoon a bunch of years ago, and there's another car share launching shortly in Saskatchewan with electric, and we help them as well. So you can actually go to yxe.suncountryecostore.com, and we're helping. That's a sustainability EcoStore pilot, for a larger scale rollout, but that's a Saskatoon EcoStore. So there you can basically go and find an electric vehicle, electric bike. You can, create implement a sustainable lawn with those products there that will save you money on your water bill, on your lawn, lawn cutting bill. The whole goal there is to be able to, feed the birds for free, and with gourmet type wild bird seed, just by saving money on your electric bill and your gas bill, your water bill, etc. Somebody just went there.
Yeah, that's me. I'm good.
Oh, that's Matthew. Thanks, Matthew. So the idea is just to continue to disrupt at a grassroots level without having to go through agencies or corporations or buyer groups or whatnot that it's very difficult to push stuff through. And I know it personally, so that's why we launched it at Saskatoon. there. So there's a couple more Nissan Leafs that just arrived in Saskatchewan in the last week. So it's sort of ironic that the only Nissan dealer there is the most northern one in the entire province up in Prince Albert. So it's sort of funny. So good to see you guys from Saskatchewan on, and you too, Matthew. Thank you.
Well, actually, Kent, my partner, John Klein, and actually those two Nissan Leafs are sitting in the driveway with my Nissan Leafs right now.
The word is out then. I wasn't saying anything.
Actually, you see him right, he's right there.
Awesome. Yeah. And congratulations to you guys for all that effort.
Yeah. So, but I was going to say that we got our 2014 actually from Port Moody, and it was imported from California. So,
that would have been Westwood Honda, Honda and Port Moody. Yeah.
No, it was an electric vehicle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I know what you're talking about with the car share, and Anyways.
So on that note, I think I'm going to jump in here because I was planning to introduce Kent Rathwell anytime now, and he sort of managed to jump in there, and that was perfect. I think maybe a little exercise we could do here before you get going is, could everybody from Saskatchewan just put up your hand or hit the hand thing on screen? We'd like to kind of get a visual idea who all's from Saskatchewan here.
Blaine, you don't count anymore.
No, people who are originally from Saskatchewan.
That doesn't count. That would be everybody. We don't. Well, anyway, that's great, guys. I was just going to say, by way of introducing Kent, we get more question and answer, Q&A later. But Kent, you came to the bakery, and as I recall, this might kind of define how the EV world has gone in a way that explains it. We had a conversation. I think you were finished giving test drives after like 4.5 hours nonstop. And we were chatting about, and you talked about Tesla shares being available. And I thought, what, Tesla shares? Oh, wow. And they were trading for $20 at that time. So that gives you some idea. What are they today? $820 or something, 820. So that gives you some perspective, I think, on just what's going on in the EV world, because that little roadster, boy, oh boy, that attracted a lot of attention. And that was the beginning of the EV club. There are about 7 or 8 of us with Leafs. So I don't know, Ken, what else, what all you want to chat about? You've already kind of started into it, and that's great. You talked a bit about that seed and happy birds. When I hear there's fresh bird seed around, I always squeal, so I don't know. If you want to just take it from there and talk a bit more about what you're up to.
Sure, I think that was 2012, David.
It was, yeah.
Really, that was in about spring 2012.
Yeah.
It was right after the auto show because, we launched at the Toronto Auto Show. We launched with a big vision, and it was sort of funny because we electrified the highway from Ottawa to Toronto, and we drove it and arrived at the launch of the Toronto Auto Show. And I mean, it was like international news. It was the craziest thing, right? And such a little stretch now looking back, but it just shows you how early, I guess it was, right? That, we electrified that you could drive an electric car from one city to another and very quickly, and actually charge up for free and, along the way. And so right after that auto show, that was a phenomenal auto show. We had, I think 150,000 people through that show. And it was about 2 weeks straight. So we had anywhere from, one person at our booth to 200 at the same time. It was pretty crazy. But, so I came back to Saskatoon after that launch, and the vehicle was being trailered to Saskatoon. And someone told me about the Vancouver Auto Show. So, we were hitting all these auto shows, or we were hitting the auto shows because Tesla couldn't afford to do the auto shows. That they didn't have any money at that time. They're just trying to sell their inventory to survive, and of the Roadsters, and get some deposits. And I was trying to help them with their share value, but ultimately prove that you could travel in an electric car, and we could electrify highways. But it was 3 weeks to the day that I heard about the VC, the VC auto show. And so I called the team up and I said, you know, if we're going to take the car to BC anyway, we might as well electrify the whole damn highway there. So we did. We actually, within 3 weeks from start to finish, we actually electrified the route to Vancouver and drove it. And that was the craziest thing, but it was really cool. So it was right after that, David, that we had met, because we came over, you know, at that point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, so that's when I met some electric vehicle owners, you know, in early 2012, and that was pretty cool because there wasn't too many of them. And but yeah, that Roadster was the first electric car, I believe, in Saskatchewan. It came in 2000, well, before 2011. So, but yeah, so that's and it was a pleasure, because I really didn't know any electric vehicle owners for the most part at that point. So it was really cool to find out how passionate these people were, and still are today. You know, like in Saskatchewan, it's still very early stages, but we you know, we launched from there in 2012, and we would have launched in 2011, but you know, we're still getting our charging station created, you know, at that point. So anyway, so thanks for having me on. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, Ken. That's been great. I don't know if you. I heard when I know that I saw you in Salt Spring Island a couple of summers ago. You were there with some biochar and seed that you were talking about. I was kind of curious how that was going. And there's also a hint that maybe you've got some other things up your sleeve that are coming down the pipe.
Sure,
I think that's every day. That's true of you, isn't that not true?
Well, yeah. So, you know, this all started 30 years ago this year, you know, back in studying civil engineering in Ontario. And I had an epiphany that the way we designed our cities were completely unsustainable economically, socially, or environmentally. And then I started going out from there, you know, looking at our transportation system, our power generation system, our healthcare system, our retirement system, and I couldn't find anything that was actually economically, socially, or environmentally sustainable. And it was very scary. And the reason I had that epiphany was because I was managing quite a few construction sites for the region, you know, highways, sewers, bridges, etc. And I would show up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'd leave. You know, I'd be the last to leave, or I'd show up, you know, when no one was expecting. And I caught the contractors trying to pull a lot of shortcuts, which would really put the taxpayer, you know, funding that project again, you know, a year, 2 years after it was completed, rather than say 20 or 30 or 40 years. So, and I caught him on numerous occasions, right? So that's actually when I had my epiphany and when all this started. And I was looking at, you know, because I was running, you know, many different streets of, you know, full road and sewer rehabs and whatnot. And it's like, oh man, you know, not even the same streets or similar, or, you know, streets side by side of one another in the same area of a city are the same, you know, the same products or services, or they're not installed the same way, and they have different lifestyles and you know, lifespans. I mean, not lifestyles, but yeah, it was very complex. So actually, at that point, I actually decided to create a city from scratch, because that's really what we did in civil engineering. We did skyscrapers and bridges and highways and storm sewers and, you know, sanitary systems and whatnot. And so yeah, that's really when it all started. Obviously, I couldn't talk to anybody about it, you know, because that was, you know, there was no real thing like the environmental movement at that point in a big way. And so you couldn't even talk to my family or friends or anyone, right? So let alone as a new city from scratch, right? So so since then, I've been actually developing all these technologies to disrupt each sector, right? And make them all economically, socially, environmentally sustainable. So that's, so you know, from an outside perspective, I guess, or maybe even inside, it looks as though I'm all over the damn place and I don't know where I'm going, right? But ultimately, that's where I'm going. You know, if you look at a city, you need to have sustainable water, sustainable sewers, sustainable transportation, sustainable jobs, sustainable food, sustainable, you know, construction, so that we don't keep putting the tax burden on the next generation. And So that's really, you know, what I've been working on. So I can say now, in the past year, we've completed all of those solutions to actually do that. So we can actually create a large-scale sustainable community from scratch in about a 12 to 24 month period, which is pretty cool. So because it's been 3 decades of 1,000 miles an hour. So the transportation space, we're still not there. And I'd like to hear from you guys too on this. But like we're, you know, the world isn't going, you know, if the science or if the climate scientists are correct, and I'm not saying they are, I'm not saying they're not, but there's sure a lot of them that are saying we're in trouble. If they are correct, then carbon neutral transportation and carbon neutral farming and carbon neutral like food production and power generation and water production and sewer, you know, treatment, et cetera, it all needs to be zero emission, right? The problem is, you know, we're not going to see other countries go that way, or even in the developed world so much. We're not even moving that fast, and it's very difficult. As Matthew had said in regards to Sask Power, you know, we started talking to them back in early 2012 to let them know what we're going to be doing, and you know, we talked to a lot of other municipalities too, and some have come on and some haven't, or utilities and municipalities. And you know, I won't say, you know, there was one municipality that we offered them free charging stations, and it took them, you know, 10 months to decide on whether they would accept them. And this is a big city in Canada. And they finally decided at the 10-month period, no, we can't take them because they're too expensive to install. You know, we were giving them 3 100-amp chargers. Well, that was 10 months. So if you look at the Trans-Canada Highway, we electrified the whole damn highway from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, BC, and drove it in 9 months. So, you know, it shows you, you know, not that they're not willing to make a difference. It's really just the systems are really difficult for a lot of people to make decisions, right? And the bigger they are, whether they're corporate or government, you know, even small towns sometimes. But, you know, it's very difficult because no one wants to put their neck on the line. Like a lot of you guys have, you know, you've all taken arrows in the back, right? You know, especially the ones that have been in it the longest, right? In regards to comments like, you guys are crazy, it'll never work, you know, da 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 da. And that's where, you know, the EV owners that have been at this for as long as, you know, what some of you guys have been doing it for is really tremendous. And, you know, I don't, for sure, the EV owners, you know, today and even back then, especially back then, don't get enough credit for what they've done because they've really changed the world, right? So, you know, we've got a lot of fanfare and whatnot because we promoted, you know, certain things, but at the end of the day, you know, every single one of them on the planet has taken a berating somehow, either from a spouse or a kid or a neighbor, you know, an employee or a golf buddy or whatever, right? So, you know, I just make sure that I state that, and I do really appreciate everything that you guys have done to help create a sustainable transportation for the world. So, you know, in Saskatchewan, Matthew, you talked about -50. You know, the RAV4 that I brought out there, you know, it was made in Canada, and the argument was if a car was made in Canada but designed for the California market, wasn't even designed for the cold, could handle a Saskatchewan winter, then I guess, you know, imagine what electric cars could do if they were actually designed for the cold weather. And the one story was, on that one, I came into the Saskatoon airport at about 2 in the morning and got out, and it was -60 with the wind chill. And as Matthew said, a lot of his friends' vehicles that weren't electric, you know, have issues in the cold. But actually, I jumped in and I turned it on, and I turned on the seat heater, and it said, you know, a pre-warming or preheating, and don't drive it, right? So anyway, so I brushed off the snow and I jumped in, and within 5 minutes it said, okay, good to go, you know, and I took off. And the funny thing was, it wasn't plugged in, you know, that's the wildest thing. But all of the other vehicles in the parking lot, you know, they would have had a hard time starting in, you know, that type of, you know, -60 with wind chill. It was darn cold. So and it has been a hard slug in Saskatchewan, and a lot of it, it's just that, you know, people aren't exposed to things, for everybody that did the Amazing Race for those 3 years, hats off to you guys, because the whole goal of the Amazing Race, the reason I did it was I heard that there was a lot of people that installed chargers across Canada, when they're giving them away, who installed them even though they didn't expect to see an electric car ever, and that's powerful when somebody spends, say, $1,000 or maybe $2 or more to install one of these things, and just to support a vision or a dream, and knows that there's not going to be another vehicle ever coming back and charging there, just to support a vision. It's one thing to say it; it's another thing to commit that kind of money, but also to commit that kind of money when your friends and family and neighbors and golf buddies and coworkers are berating you, right? So these people as well are just really special people that have done that. And the coolest thing about the World's Longest Green Highway project in 2012 was that people from all over Canada, from every single province, and from different backgrounds and cultures and languages and economic classes and education levels, and different religions, and you name it, right, went ahead and did this type of thing. And it was absolutely asinine that they did it, but they did it. And that's really impressive what can happen when you look at, electrifying the longest highway in the world, the entire distance, and driving it with total, being committed on total strangers doing this, because, I had committed to not paying the install. I committed to paying the chargers, not because it was cheap. I wanted to make sure that other people bought into this vision, and so that it wasn't just me, right? And they did it. And that's really the most magical part, I think, about that. And the media, media gets chastised but at that time, the media wasn't supportive of electric vehicles, and no one was. Talking to the automakers, their staff weren't, their executives typically weren't, their shareholders weren't, the general public wasn't. But the media, they do get hammered, but the media actually spread the message of that trip around the world. And we there's a company, well, they still exist, called Meltwater. And they showed, they searched the world's web, and they came up with results, and they showed me the dashboard, and I said, well, what's the green dot? And they said, well, that's actually a pie chart. And I said, okay, well, tell me what it means. It means, well, 100% of the media in every language and script around the world, is positive. And it was like, that's incredible, because most people would criticize electric vehicles, never work, no good in the cold, there's no place to travel, they're not sexy, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we did the World's Longest Green Highway project, was to shatter all those barriers. But it was pretty cool that 100% of all the articles around the entire world, the majority of the article was positive, because otherwise that wouldn't be 100% green pie chart. So that was super cool. So again, without the media getting the word out, a lot of people wouldn't even know about Tesla. No one did back then, so it was pretty cool. And really, I just wanted to, take my hat off to everybody, because it's everybody on this call, and everyone outside of this call, and even people that don't have electric vehicles, or don't have solar, or don't have other green products, but they've been talking about it. And when they know they're going to get hammered on the debate, right, from everybody in the room, and that's really what we need to do. So in regards to the city project, up until a year ago, there was probably less than a dozen people that knew anything about it, and today, up until this call, there was probably 3 dozen people in the world that know about it, right? And so obviously, I think the number just went up a little bit. So, but ultimately, going back to the transportation side, I believe the two main barriers holding back 100% EV adoption, which will allow us to have 100% zero emission transportation. We've dealt with the cars are not sexy, they're not fast, there's no place to charge them, they're no good in the cold. Well, they're still powered by coal power plants, and this sort of thing. But I believe the two holding back the electric vehicle today, based upon the tens of thousands of people we've talked to over the years about putting in chargers and helping the automakers, and this sort of thing, is really the networking fees for charging stations, and And if everyone goes electric, the whole grid's going to pop. So is there any other big barriers, like what, bigger barriers than those two that anybody on the call has? Because we do have large scale factories making electric cars. We do have, companies saying that that's all they'll make in the future. So again, is there any other two massive barriers other than electric vehicle charging network fees? Because a lot of people haven't been putting in charges because the network fees are too expensive, and or they're committed to a back end that if they end up not being able to pay their monthly fee, then the charger shuts off, even though they might have paid a few $1,000 for it, and the fact that the grids can't handle it. So I'd open that up to everyone.
I'll take the grid thing first. That one's been dead for a number of years. And anybody who's actually still talking about that really doesn't understand how the grid works. And in fact, how EVs can make it better. So I'll knock that one on the head. And I know Jim Heinsohn is very keen to talk about chargers and charging. Yeah. Jim? You have to unmute yourself, Jim. Jim, mute.
I'll step in if Jim's finding. Okay, go, Jim.
I'm good. Okay, so the big ones I see are right to charge. We've got 50,000 partially or fully pre-wired parking spots in Vancouver alone, but there's no requirement for any strata to allow people to hook up to them. So we're doing well in getting some of the infrastructure rolled out, but they don't have any rights to charge. The Strata Corporation simply says, we don't want to do it, and that's the end of it. Now, there are success stories, but there aren't nearly enough. So we have to crack the right to charge problem. The next one is certainly EV infrastructure and new construction. Now, BC is really leading the world in that we have municipal bylaws in place covering 2.2 million BC residents, where any new building, any new residential building in particular, is required through the zoning bylaw to have 100% of their parking spaces pre-wired for EVs. Nobody else has that in the world. Saanich took it one step further, and they've covered commercial, industrial, institutional, with different requirements for each kind of property depending on whether or not it should have it. For example, there's no point in wiring a McDonald's or a fast food location. So Saanich is leading the world in that. BC is leading the world in that legislation, but we've only got half our citizens covered with it in the municipal bylaws. The third one, which is a really tough one to crack, and we're still working on it, is Measurement Canada. Measurement Canada does not allow, for example, my strata to charge by the kilowatt hour. So the result is we have managed charging in my strata, which is capable of fully charging an EV at 6.6 kilowatts, or in a managed environment, if the other cars are plugged in, you might get 2 kilowatts, but either way you paid $1 to $2 an hour. Measurement Canada has not been very responsive to that problem, and there are some technical issues, so if anybody's got any ideas, I'd certainly like to hear what they are. So those are the three on my list.
I'd like to add a bit further some other points that are going to be problems for adoption. All those points are absolutely valid. I totally agree with the grid not being as much of a barrier. What I like to say is electric cars are the gateway drug for full electrification. And once you have your electric car, it's like, oh, I should get some solar panels. Oh, I should get a power wall. Oh, it's like the natural thing to have everybody have their own microgrid, and I don't need to buy any electricity from my hydro. So obviously people in condos can't do that. But I think that's problems we can work out. But here's the longer range problem. I've been looking at medium to heavy vehicles, heavy duty vehicles. Now for consumer cars, batteries are absolutely fine, no problems. But as soon as you get into a bigger vehicle, when you talk about cement trucks or Class 8 semi-trailer trucks, long distance trucks, buses, as soon as you get into that kind of class of vehicle, to have the fossil fuel equivalent to do a duty cycle of those commercial vehicles, you get into battery sizes that are huge, and they become unworkable. They eat into your payload. So I've always been a naysayer on the hydrogen fuel cell. Like, it's never going to happen. And I've debated it against PhD students. But in the last few months, I've come around to say, I think for two reasons, hydrogen fuel cells are going to be part of our electrified future. One, because medium to heavy duty vehicles simply can't take the weight of those batteries to do the powering, the duty cycles they need to do. And two, when you think about, we're at what, 2% production of motor vehicles today are electric. When we get to 20% or 50% or 60%, the amount of raw materials we're going to need for batteries is going to be mind-blowing, right? The supply chain for batteries right now is already straining by 10, 20, 30 times. And then to find batteries to electrify our medium and heavy duty fleets, I think that's going to be a challenge. And people have written about this. There's a great article in Atlantic magazine that was asking this question and saying, where are all these raw materials going to come from to make all these batteries? And they're literally thinking of mining the oceans at this point in time, which they have no idea what damage can be done by mining the oceans. So I think some longer range issues for electrification are going to be where we're going to get all the materials from to make those batteries. And I think, funnily enough, and this is what I've come to realize the last couple months, hydrogen fuel cells are going to be a part of electrifying medium and heavy duty vehicles. The dynamics do not work for battery electric vehicles and when you get into heavy duty vehicles. And that's half of our emissions from transportation is from the heavy duty, that all the diesel powered ambulances, fire trucks, everything. There's my point.
Well, perhaps that should be an entire topic to its own on one of our other Saturday meetings, John. Love to talk about that. I did want to talk about one other barrier to EVs, and that's mainly supply. So you've got Tesla cranking out like crazy when they are producing. They still can't meet their demand. And then you have Kia and Hyundai are looking to double what they crank out every year, but that's still, talking fairly low numbers, less than 100,000, I think. Anybody can correct me on that. And then you have the classic legacy internal combustion engine companies, and they're mainly looking at still, compliance number of vehicles, less than 50,000 a year. So as demand goes up, and everybody here who's had to wait more than a few weeks for a car knows what I'm talking about. If you were online for a Kona, you waited a long time for a great car, but you had to wait for a long time because there's a supply problem.
Cool. Thank you. Am I back on? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So, yeah, over the last, almost decade, we've talked to a ton of utilities. We've talked to, bus companies, et cetera. We actually we took the BYD 40-foot metro bus out to Saskatoon, got it shipped out there, and then we actually drove it down to Regina to Saskatchewan about in, I think, 2014, that electric buses are even possible, right? And we didn't charge it along the way between the two cities, and we still had lots of juice left in it when we did it, but it really blew people's minds, right? And so we've talked to a lot, and the utilities have told me in general that at 25% EV adoption, that there's not one utility in North America that's actually ready for 25%. today. But BC Hydro always said that they could scale. And recently, I'm sensing that based upon what Metro Vancouver municipalities have done and their commitments, that now they're starting to sweat a little bit. So would you guys be saying that in BC? Are you seeing the same sort of concern that
one thing in BC, the prospect of negawatts, right? You know the concept? If we got rid of baseboards and replaced them by heat pumps in BC, we'd have all the power and energy we need to power electric cars. My baseboard heating will pull 100 kilowatt hours a day when it's -5 in Vancouver. I can't burn more than 2 or 3 kilowatt hours a day for my urban travel. So negawatts, getting rid of all the inefficiencies in our system, will provide all the power we need for electric cars.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Yeah, I do know BC has a lot of electric heat, and same as Quebec and a bunch of others. So thank you for that. But in general, that's sort of what we're finding is the utilities are a little bit nervous. Saskatchewan, there's numerous reasons for them to not or SaskPower to not really jump on board. But they are starting to bring some power in from Manitoba and such to deal with their carbon issues. So that's basically where I'm looking at it is, I see electric vehicle owners as rightly said, is the gateway drug. And the nice thing about electric vehicles is now they're sexy and they're fast and you can travel for free in essence. So, but those cars need to be in workplace parking lots, in government parking lots, in golf course parking lots, in neighborhoods. That's why clustering happens. When somebody gets an electric car, and next thing you know, there's 10 other electric cars in that neighborhood, but they're not in the neighborhoods surrounding that neighborhood. And the clustering is another issue for utilities, but ultimately I agree. You get the car, 60-70% of people with electric cars are looking at solar or have it. And then that's when they look at the electric bikes, they look at the sustainable lawns, and so those are really the champions that I see in the world to get the message out, not through conventional forms. People have too many opinions about things they shouldn't have opinions for, because they don't have any experience in the thing they have an opinion for, but it stops the people that are trying to make a difference. It's stopping those champions and their families and their neighborhoods or their workplaces or corporations or governments that are actually trying to make a difference. So I don't really see a fast enough adoption of green technologies globally to deal with the climate scientists' issues, when they're saying, hey, we have 10 years. And again, I'm not saying they're right, but there's a lot of them that are saying it. So, let's say they're wrong. Okay, well, we're probably not going to get there anyway. Okay, well, let's say they're right and we don't do anything. We're in serious trouble, because we're having a hard time getting to that point today. So I'm really hoping that they're wrong, but I think it's good to bet that they're right. And then if we look at approaching things that way, there's less division, in regards to how we message things. And if we can eliminate the division and unite, in Canada with all the different cultures and languages across the nation, the world's made up of those Canadians that put in charging stations that offered free charging to people for almost the last decade. And they're, those people come from Canada, but they also come from other countries. And if we can get people like that to connect with their family and friends around the world, we can actually change the world. We don't have to do it constantly through the slow process of corporations and governments. But we still have to do those, but we still have to have a backup plan, because we know that word of mouth spreads really quickly and it spreads around the world quickly. And we've proven that with the world's longest green highway project. So ultimately, I personally don't think we're going to decarbonize fast enough based upon what these climate scientists are talking about. So that's where I see, where we need to ramp things up very quickly and have zero emission transportation very fast. And then we need to go that route, and we're still going to have ice cap and whatnot, whether it's human caused or not, it doesn't matter. even if it isn't human caused, if we can reduce, greenhouse gases and the greenhouse effect, we can slow those melting of the ice caps, which ultimately triggers the ocean current issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I really see as though we need to look at transportation because it's sort of everywhere and people need it, and it's very much in people's faces as the impetus to change. So
Ken,
yes.
do you feel that COVID-19 and the changes that that's imposed will have any effect? What's your opinion?
Yeah, the Sun Country City project. Again, basically, it's a city in a box, right? And it's completely self-contained, 100%. And if we had those out there today, we wouldn't have had issues because I would have shut the door. We wouldn't have COVID in those cities, and those cities are self-sustainable. In regards to food production, you name it, the whole thing is there. Energy production, if the grid goes down, we're still good, right? If the food supply chains go down, we're still good. If the freight companies go down, we're still good. Like the poor truckers right now, not having a place to eat or go to the washroom is who would have ever thought of that, right? Well, that's happening now. So I definitely see Canadians and Americans and looking. And other people around the world, but looking at their whole lifestyle and looking how they've become so susceptible to other countries, not only just control of their manufacturing or their food production or, you name it, oil, et cetera, right? But now it's not just basic stuff. Now people are starting to understand that, hey, these viruses could turn into something that's way better than bullets, right? So, I think now we're going to see a major change, and it's really good. It's about time. It's been a really good shakeup, and I think a lot of people are at home spending time with their spouses and their kids, and they're happier than they were before this all happened. So it's really a major shakeup, John, and I'm glad that you brought up the question. That, again, it's just my opinion, right? Everybody has opinions. So, but based upon the stuff that I've been working on for the last 3 decades, this is going to move the world into the direction that I've been sort of trying to create for a few decades.
So, should we be lobbying on your behalf to the government for a shovel-ready project?
Well, I actually, for the last 2 years, I've had a guy traveling the world looking. I figured it would have to be a sultan or a sheik, Qatar, Dubai, India, potentially in some areas that this needed to happen in. And obviously I wanted it to happen in North America, like in Canada, right? So, and I can, like, all the pilots are done, so but they're not all in one spot. So that's really the cool thing about it, right? But
I could think of a good cities in the province of Alberta that might need some economic injection and a new way of looking at things. Maybe there's the way to go.
Well, I think it's more of a community because municipalities have certain laws as well, right? Which are restrictive and inhibit the ability to move quickly. So, but there is an opportunity. There's a project in Canada which isn't a municipality that we're working on, and we'll sort of see what happens there. But ultimately, I wanted to, and thank you for inviting me to the call. But I really, I have a few advisors I have a lot of advisors in a lot of different areas, and I usually pitch them on an idea or whatever, but I don't explain where I'm going with it. So, I don't bring it all together because, not to protect the IP, but to protect that it doesn't get bastardized, right? That somebody doesn't try to replicate it without just, and screw it up. And then the problem with that is then when you're ready to launch, then the media and everybody else goes, oh, well, that's already been tried. It didn't work, right? So that's why I've always kept my cards really close to my chest. But I've got tremendous amount of advisors, and a lot are even on this call. And you don't know, you may not know it, but yeah. And I have to appreciate, I really do appreciate everybody keeping things as close to their chest as they have, whenever I ask them to do it. So, you know, going back to transportation and what John had said about it being the gateway drug, I think it was John Stonia, but I 100% agree. And it's those people around the world that will change the world, and they can do it overnight with calls like this. So, so I'm looking at doing a crowdfund. I almost hit the button a few times, right? But I just wanted to oh, hey, I'm almost close on one more thing. So we've got, you know, and you know, I've been doing this for I think 2 years now, ready to hit it. And I really think we need to go carbon negative. And the reason I think we need to go carbon negative is because what I've been doing carbon neutral with the first zero emission carbon neutral company in Saskatchewan 12 years ago, you know, as a factory, but it was also the first zero emission company. And having the first zero emission vehicle in Saskatchewan and the first zero emission fertilizer manufacturing, first zero emission whatever, right? It's not going to be fast enough. And I really see we need to go carbon negative. And I just wanted to sort of see what your thoughts on that were. Obviously, that's really like sucking carbon out of the atmosphere as you're driving down the road, right? So it's like sucking carbon out of the atmosphere as you're manufacturing products or as you're living in your home. And I'm just wondering, in regards to that, and I know we can do it, right? But ultimately, I'm just looking for the biggest barriers that are going to come up, so we can, you know, make sure we can counter those issues when the debates come, right?
Well, Kent, I'll take a first stab at this. So if we look at, what's that name? The company in Squamish, Carbon
Engineering. Yeah.
Carbon Engineering. So they've got a process there where they're sucking carbon out of the air, and that looks really good. And then they're producing a carbon neutral fuel out of it. But they're also burning a fair amount of liquid natural gas, methane, and they're using a lot of electricity to produce it. Clean Technica did a terrific sort of look at it, by numbers, and the economics don't work into it, and the actual carbon sucked out once you've taken all the carbon out of the air, run it through the system, and use it as fuel again, burning things, it was only like a 25% better. You know,
oh wow,
you could tune an internal combustion engine to the nth degree, or run it with as a plug-in hybrid and get much better results. You know, it's really, to my opinion, it's merely just a lot of greenwashing for that company and all the companies who invest in it. So any sort of, I always, my ears perk up when somebody says they're doing something carbon neutral. You're right. It has to be carbon negative. We have to be taking more out than we're putting in. And almost all processes I've seen for carbon neutral so far, other than hiding it underground, and even that, they can't guarantee it stays underground. Look what happens when we frack. So I get really, really nervous when I hear that. Just my 2 bits. Hopefully that stimulated some other people.
Thanks, Glenn. I haven't reached out to them yet. I haven't had time, but my plan was to. But I've also had some other people give me some knowledge on them. So, thank you. Anyone else?
It says I'm muted. Am I on here now?
Yes, Don.
Okay, okay, good. PICS, the Institute for Climate Solutions, is sponsoring some research on this very area on negative carbon, trying to absorb it. I really don't know where it's going to go. They're looking at some stuff using the oceans. I don't really understand it very much at all, and I have my doubts about it. The operation out in Squamish, I haven't seen anything that shows that there's really a net negative on carbon emissions. And I think that's a long-term goal to go after for sure, Ken, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there's any doubt about what the climate scientists are saying and how fast we have to move. I think we've been underestimating it a long, long time. The COVID has given us a great opportunity to rethink how we live as societies. And I just read an article this morning from an economist from the UK, from the University of London, which I'll share with you, a bunch of you guys if you're interested. It's a really stark look at what's coming down the road universally around the world, and because of this. But it's anyway, on the positive side, for solar cells, and there's a new product, or not new product, but a developing product called, I don't know if any of you have heard of it, it's PEROVSKITE, solar cells, perovskite, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's already in production. It substantially increases the efficiency of the solar cells, and is made of, I guess it's a composite of tin, lead, and some other chemicals as well. The lead doesn't sound very good, but anyway, it's very cheap. So it's supposed to reduce the cost of production of solar cells substantially. Anyway, I think that's a way to look. And back to the notion of the electric cars and the efficiency of them. And people try to, I see very common people trying to poo-poo electric cars and saying, well, electricity in Saskatchewan is generated with coal, so it doesn't have any benefit. In actual fact, it does, because of a gas vehicle's efficiency is only about 20% of it gets to the wheels, whereas an electric car, it's in excess of 80%. So that difference with the efficiency of the vehicles dramatically changes the ability to electrify the fleet and to electrify far more. In our own home, I've cut our carbon emissions by over 90% by going to a high efficiency heat pump, as John Stone has pointed out. It's saving us a bundle. Just a month ago or 3 weeks ago, I installed a high efficiency electric heat pump hot water tank, which seems to be reducing our electrical consumption by summers around 20 to 30% daily. So that will have an impact and free up megawatts. And that's where I think the big megawatts is going to come from, is converting, as you said, John, and I've done calcs in this as well, that we could basically supply enough electricity by people moving out of baseboard heaters and electric furnaces to high efficiency heat pumps. Will free up as much energy as electrifying virtually the whole fleet of cars and light trucks in BC. And that's just not really accepted and understood yet. I've tried to get things through to the provincial officials. I've sent stuff on it to every MLA. I just sent something a couple of days yesterday to the Minister of ENPR as well on related subjects around greenhouse gas emissions and gas. As long as we're wedded, as we seem to be developing more and more natural gas plants, we're fighting against nature, if you wish, to try and actually go and cut our emissions substantially. But certainly the EVs are a great way. Kent, one of the things I was wondering about is how are you able to finance your electric highway? And I use your station frequently. I much appreciate it. And are you able to continue keep these things going through carbon credits, or how do you finance this to keep it going? Or is there a way that we can help?
Right. Well, a quick story is, we had the first zero emission company factory in Saskatchewan, the first zero emission company of our kind in the world in the pet food sector, over a decade ago. And so I went to Tesla because I read Popular Science. There's a little article in there about Tesla, like small. And so I had never heard of them. So I went down there to check it out and actually took one for a test drive. And they were just all in, they were just in a little, shop basically, right? That was everything. And I took it and it was amazing. And I said, yeah, I want one of these. This is exactly what I need to drive back and forth to work with zero emissions. And I know, as long as they charged up at the plant. So anyway, so I said, hey, how do you plug these things in, right? Like, where do you go? And they said, wow, there's really, you charge at home. It's like, so you guys built this car and there's no place to go and charge stations. That's brilliant, right? So you guys are screwed. I'm still buying the car because I'm going to need it, but you guys are gone. So, and anyway, he goes, well, we're just trying to sell our inventory to survive, right? And so it's just like, wow. So yeah, I just walked around the plate. I said, I need a half an hour. So I walked around and, my wife didn't know what I was talking or what I was thinking, but I was just walking around and I came back and I said, someone's got to put in these charging stations to allow these vehicles to travel. And can you tell me what one looks like and how they work? And he goes, why? And goes, I'll do it. I'll do something, and I'll make sure that you guys get a lot of publicity or something to make it work great. So ultimately, I said, who's the best charging station company in the world? Don't need sex appeal, just want something basic that will work, right? And they said, well, there's only one company in the world, and that's this one. So I said, all right, well, great. And so I said, so he goes, do you want to meet Elon? And it's like, who's Elon? And well, he's our owner. He's our biggest shareholder. And he's like, you just told me that you guys are pretty much out of business. You don't have a place to charge your cars, and you're making these cars, and you're trying to sell your inventory to survive. No, he's trying to save his company. I need to go out and figure out what a charging station is, and then put a bunch of them out there so you can actually travel in your cars, right? So funny story, but and then when I went to Clipper Creek, they said, well, I said, what's the biggest, charge you ever made? Because they said, oh, we have 40 amp chargers. And I said, what's the biggest one you've ever made that's like guaranteed to work? He goes, well, we made a 100 amp charger for a truck, but it doesn't have that plug on it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll take that charger with that plug. And it was like, no, that doesn't make any sense in the world at all. It took me a couple months to get them figured out, and about a $500,000 check that I was ready to rip up. So, and that was just a start. But ultimately, I went home to Saskatchewan, and that's when I just started selling off everything I could to finance this, including one of the, a poultry operation. So, so going back to your question is, there was no way that I could actually ask Don people to pay a few thousand, $3,000 for a charger for a vehicle that doesn't even really, for a vehicle they don't even know anything about electric vehicles, or he said there is no such thing, or, so that was why we did it. We actually did it without contracts too, because if there was legal contracts for those chargers, then we still wouldn't have had it done. And it's actually today, shocking, almost a decade later, there's still not a charging network across the entirety of Canada, from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland. So it shows you how far we still need to go, right? And yes, they're coast to coast, and there's a lot of mismessaging out there, but ultimately the Newfoundlanders have been left in the dark. And so anyway, so that's my little rant. So if I was to state that again, because I'm looking at the EV owners as passionate champions that have a whole bunch of arrows already in their backs, right? But I'm looking at those people as the people that can change the world. And the great thing is there's a lot more of them now than there was, say, a decade ago. A decade ago, there was just those ones that had been in there building their own vehicles, really. For the most part, there was hardly any production vehicles at that point. But if I was to actually state that by the end of 2021, you would be able to travel across North America in a carbon negative fashion, and I wouldn't say it unless I know we can do it, right? So what do you think the EV people would say? And what's the biggest barriers I would need to get over on that front? And then also in regards to the other ones, other than we're crazy. But I'm used to that one, been used to that one for a few decades now.
I'll kick in again. You told me that you could do that. I would say that was freaking awesome. Then I would ask how much.
Well, you must be drinking, Glenn, because I didn't expect that answer. Maybe we should get you when you sober up, Glenn. No. That's good. But can anybody else pitch in on that? Because when you announce something, you need to make sure you can hit it, right? Because otherwise you lose all credibility. And with us, the credibility's there in different sectors, and we definitely wouldn't jeopardize that. So I know we can do it, but what do you think the biggest barriers we're going to have from people other than we're crazy or that it's not possible? And then I'll go back to your cost question, Glenn.
Well, you've got thermodynamics working for you on this. I'm trying to figure out how this would happen. You basically want to be laying down blocks of carbon as a waste product, right?
Yeah, it basically, as you travel, you're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere in theory, right? Yeah. Yeah. So it's the thing is it's a bit, it involves multiple technologies and multiple sectors to make this all happen, I guess. But the latest one we just finished off, and hence one of those delays why I didn't launch it earlier was now we're able to measure the carbon by the gram, and and so we're good to go now. So now we have a lot more we can verify it a lot better than what we could before. It still makes sense before, but now we can actually really verify it. So yeah. So again, traveling across North America in the world's first carbon negative transportation system by 2021.
I'll take two.
Okay, so let me just jump in here for half a second. You're traveling across North America in the world's first carbon neutral transportation system. So that doesn't mean the vehicle's carbon neutral. What it means is the energy the vehicle is using is carbon neutral. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, carbon negative actually, Bruce.
Okay, so you found a method of generating the electricity or the energy that the vehicle is going to use that'll produce a surplus of energy?
No, I've just figured out a way to travel create a system where you can travel with carbon negative implementation, or an impact, right? A carbon negative impact. But it's a bit, it's taken a long time to figure all these out to make it all work, right? But it's an integrated approach. And I can't obviously say what it is because otherwise someone would go out there and try bastardizing it, right? So, but I'm just wondering what, in regards to, if Elon said it, people would go, okay, cool, right? But if somebody else says it, what do you think the biggest barriers are going to be on that? Number one. Number two, if you didn't know the technology, would you feel that you would contribute towards that in a crowdfund?
Something on the house that Arno and now that Rolf is building are these, I call them marijuana houses, but they're homes that are built with bricks that are made of hemp straw, that's the marijuana, and lime. And the lime cures over a period of about 70 or 80 years, I think. And as it cures, it absorbs carbon from the atmosphere. So you take a torch to it to put a fire against it, the CO2 that's released from these bricks will actually put the fire out. So that's one form of negative absorption of CO2. How are you going to do it? You say you've got something figured out. That's fantastic. As you're driving along, I remember reading, and this is probably 8 or 10 years or more ago, about somebody that had some sort of a filter on the vehicle, like a radiator kind of thing, that as you drove along, it filtered out certain pollutants. But I don't believe that was carbon. And I don't know what one could use to actually take out the carbon, where you don't get into the laws of entropy, where more energy is used than the carbon equivalent coming out is. So if you've got something that you're developing, fantastic. And I think the best way of doing that is, as you did before, and they're talking about now, is doing a national demonstration and having the media showing that this vehicle has moved across the country and it has actually been carbon negative in its travels. Not that the vehicle itself is, but the operation of that vehicle has been carbon negative. And if the vehicle has a long enough lifespan, then over that lifespan, you'll recover the carbon that was used for the manufacture of the vehicle as well, and have those sorts of calcs out. But that's the way to go. And is this what you're talking about for the GoFundMe?
Well, you took it one step further. I wasn't going to actually talk about the manufacturing, but yes. So
one would hope that there's no bad side effects too.
There's none.
I mean,
only good stuff.
Carbon has a bad rap. I mean, carbon itself isn't the problem, right?
That's right.
But emissions in general and pollution, and one of the benefits of electric cars isn't just the lack of CO2. It's all the other additives in the gas, the carcinogenic stuff and so on. But that's a bit of a sidetrack, sorry. But I was just wondering if whatever this process is, as long as it doesn't take carbon out at the risk of putting something worse in.
No, it doesn't, and thank you for that. Because you're right, carbon has got hammered, and it's just that we're putting too much into the atmosphere. But we don't talk about methane and whatnot, which is worse than carbon. But carbon is the English language on climate change right now, right? So we have to utilize that language, even though there's stuff that's way worse than carbon, which is creating climate change. But yeah, so the concept is. And I realize that we have a bunch of unique people on this call, but is the concept too crazy, or does it need to be tamed down for people to believe in it enough to actually reach into their pockets? Because I can't really, sell another a large poultry farm or anything, right? So, but number two, I really want this to be an international effort, right? And we'll do it, no problem. But I really want people to be able to tell their kids, you know what? I was part of that. We contributed to that, right? So, but if it's too crazy, then people are just going to go, oh, that's off the charts. There's no way in hell that's ever going to happen, right?
I can't.
If I can interject here.
Sorry.
Mute yourself.
He needs to unmute.
Kent? I guess my comment is, in any kind of demonstration, the first thing a reporter is going to ask you is, what can you do with this carbon that you're pulling out of the air? And have some handy things like you could make soles of running shoes, or put it into tires, or something like that.
Or whatever. Yeah.
That would really be notable as well. So something that helps sell the idea that you have this other product that's visible, that's tangible, people can actually feel, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like it's a large integrated system that each component is you don't want to get too I'm going to announce it without actually telling people how to do it, right? But I understand where you're coming from on that, right? Because the biggest fear is not getting it done. The biggest fear is somebody else trying to replicate it and doing it wrong. And then the media covering that story and going, oh, see, it doesn't work. And then we get zero media, globally. And that's, we've done this before. So we need to get the global media behind us. And to do that, I would like to do a North American one, or cross-continent system that could be implemented by 2021. And obviously that sounds pretty crazy, especially when we don't know when COVID's going to disappear, right? So so that's why we're saying the end of 2021. But the plan would be a lot sooner. Well, it would be sooner than that. But yeah, so without me actually getting into details, would I understand that people on the call might dig into their pocket, but do you think your friends and family would, or coworkers that aren't really even into even solar or electric cars?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a word in edgewise here. I'm just curious. This system you're talking about, would it work with existing cars, or would people who wish to take advantage of it need to be making upgrades, replacements, etc.? And that might have a big impact on how successful the project is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I won't be announcing that in the crowdfund, I wouldn't really want to answer that question right now. But I will say that everything, if we have 10 years, we can't really create brand new, we can create new forms, but we need to scale very quickly, right?
Kent, I have a question for you.
Yes.
There's like 7 steps to product development from your idea to hitting the market. Where are you now?
We're done.
Interesting. Yep.
Something like, as far as for publicity, because this is what this needs, and I'm sure you're onto this already, but check out and go to media who are interested in it in the first place. The first place to go would probably be The Guardian, which is more or less worldwide, but centered in the UK. For doing something in Europe might be better and more receptive audience than doing it in North America, even though you're based here. But someone like The Guardian, I mean, they have a whole environmental section. The paper has dedicated itself as one of its main purposes to reduce carbon emissions in the world, to be able to keep us from committing hara-kiri as a world. So they would be an excellent source to team up with to give coverage when this thing is launched. And that's why I suggest maybe doing something in Europe might get more attention and traction than in North America. If you're going to do North America, I would suggest that you, within Canada, there's a little paper called The Observer here based out of BC, digital. I don't know of anyone national that is interested, certainly not the Globe and Mail. They fired their scientist reporters about a decade ago, and they're just starting to turn around a bit now. But to do something, go across one direction in North America through Canada, and then you return loop through the US might be something. I would say doing the Canadian one first to try and get some attention here, and then the US may pick up on it laterally when it goes back through there as a possibility for publicity at least. And there certainly are some journals you can look out to who would be interested in following through on this.
Hey, Kent, I've done a few financings of ventures in my day.
Yes, you have.
Do you have a series of advisors that that have, are under NDA and confidentiality agreements and would stand up to vouch for this technology? I mean, that's the first question. And the second question is, if this is something this great, why aren't you going to private equity and why aren't you going for government funding, grant funding to get started? That's if you have the government that's bought in, and if you have a private partner that is bought in, that's how you raise money. Because obviously this is not a startup of a small, you're probably looking at, if this is such an important technology and you want to move fast, like you say you want to, you really want to have somebody who's going to say, well, we'll write you a $10 million check. And if you do well, we'll write you a $40 million check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem with that is, it's almost been 10 years since the federal government decided, it has been funding infrastructure that could actually go national, right? So, and corporations, we're just always way too far ahead. And I've been down this road many times where they just don't believe it, right? And you also risk somebody bastardizing it, right? And so I really also did want to make this more of a global type of empowerment project, so that average people could actually make a difference. It doesn't have to be government or corporations, because most of us look at the government and corporations as the reason why we haven't changed the world. And if we can empower average people in their own homes, average people make up corporations and governments, right? But the reason that we're in the climate situation, I think, is because we've been looking at a top-down approach instead of a bottom-up. And the nice thing about bottom-up is like EV owners, you can go out and buy an EV now. Nobody can tell you not to do it. If you can find one, like in Saskatchewan, it's like, like the used one, right? You can't really find maybe a lot of new ones, but it's about knocking down that barrier. And for average kids or people to believe that they can be part of something amazing is really what the world needs. And we don't have time to really come from the top down is really where I'm at, if the climate scientists are right. And personally, I'm thinking they don't even know all the variables. So I'm thinking it's potentially worse than what they're saying. Hence why I've been going at 1,000 miles an hour for 30 years on this front, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Kent, I was just wondering if you could connect with Tesla. And I'm thinking of two things, that your mission and Elon's mission, it seems to be, absolutely parallel, but also there's about 1 million Tesla owners out there. And Some of them have deep pockets, maybe less deep now, but that might be maybe one of the best places to find the people who are already committed to a better, cleaner future.
Well, you know, in regards to reaching out to any corporation, and you know, we have direct leads with Tesla too, right? So, but it's really about, do we want people to believe that it has to be corporations and governments to make global change, or do we want to eliminate the excuse for average people to not do anything because, well, that's a government thing to do, or it's a corporation thing to do? You know, I find that the biggest reason why we're not changing the world is because we're waiting for somebody else to do it, you know, and we keep blaming others because you know, of the world being in the position. But to be able to empower somebody's kids for $5, or you know, whatever people could contribute. Now, actually, after COVID, it's a great time to launch something like this, isn't it? Like, you couldn't have picked a worse time to say, hey, you know, would you like to fund something like this, right? But that's really what I'm trying to do, is to unite, you know, everybody on the planet, right? And not just a select few. So, you know, because we have a lot of division going on globally, and it's going to create some serious issues if it continues. And that's why I'm just, you know, I try to you know, go down the middle, I guess you can say. So I try not to blame any groups or associations or industries or governments or corporations for the most part, and to try to unite those people, right? But to create a movement, and it's been proven, the biggest issue that I have right now is to create any movement, and there's been a lot of big movements in the world, you know, from you know, which, you know, I won't get into them, but any large movement, including the wars, has been very divisive to create. You need to be very divisive to create a movement. My biggest barrier is I'm trying to create a movement globally by not being divisive and you know, disrupting the rules of movements. So so that's part of this as well, right? So this goes way deeper than just creating carbon negative transportation. Mm-hmm.
Earlier, Don Scott mentioned durability, and that's one of my bugbears, is nothing is durable anymore. That people buy a new car every 3 years, well, lots of people do, dispose of them after 10 years. That's not sustainable. We're using stuff up. The car, my Soul that I bought in January, it's the first time in my life after approximately 60 cars of buying a brand new one. I've always reused them. And the 3 R's when they first came out was reduce, reuse, and recycle. And all we do is buy more, throw it away, and then, oh yeah, we'll recycle it. Recycle's the last thing. Mm-hmm. And so I see a sophisticated car like the one you see behind me. It's not going to be on the road for 20 or 30 years. It's not going to go 100,000 kilometers. And that's what's happening. It's like, once a car is outside its warranty, it becomes an orphan. It's hard to fix, it's expensive to fix. And one particular car has 0 emission written on the side of it. And I can't see them being more than 10, 11 years old before they get scrapped. Because who's going to spend $8,000 to put a new battery in a Leaf when it's a 10-year-old car? 10-year-old cars that are gas powered are getting scrapped or sold for, you know, $1,500 because the doors wear out, the fan gives up, and you got to take half the car apart to fix the heater, that sort of stuff. We've got to get away from disposable stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, I've had about 10 phones since I used one 25 years ago. And my parents' house, when it sold, it had a telephone in it that was 40 years old. So we're making big companies make a lot of profit by disposing of stuff. That's our real problem on sustainability.
And you're bang on that, because Kelly Carmichael's the only person I know that has so far replaced the battery of a Nissan Leaf. And he had to go through all sorts of changes to try and get that battery to make that happen. He had actually ended up buying somebody's used Nissan Leaf and getting the battery swapped over, and he had all sorts of hassles from all kinds of companies. At least there's one guy right now who's trying to figure out a way to swap batteries and leafs. But you're absolutely correct. What we've got to get our mind around is the idea of, let's stop worrying about all this consumption, and all the manufacturers are producing products that we have to consume, and they're not producing products with longevity in mind because they just want to sell junk.
That's the disruption of the EV industry, the electric car industry, and it's in a nutshell. Exactly. I mean, I'm in my 8th year of my Nissan Leaf, and albeit I don't put a lot of miles on like Kelly did, but I don't see ever getting rid of my car. It's going to be my city car. It's a first generation, it's limited range, but every morning I can punch that accelerator and it just goes as fast as it did the very first day I had it. And yeah, my capacity is down a bit, but I figure in maybe 3 years, 10 years time, I will either get a reconditioned pack or I'll get a pack rebuilt from wrecked Nissans, and I'll just keep mine going until somebody smacks it, basically.
This is one of the areas that we're really poor in Canada. In the US, there's already people who are rebuilding leaf batteries in particular. And there's next to nothing in this country. And I don't quite understand our lack of, maybe it's just a general lack of entrepreneurial spirits. We don't have enough Kent Rathwells in the country who are willing to take these things on and start developing small operations to do these kinds of things. I mean, there's no one in Victoria even to set up a shop that, from what I'm aware of anyway, to service electric cars.
I had an interesting call this week from the Automotive Retailers Association. And the Automotive Retailers Association is everything the New Car Dealers Association isn't. Essentially, new car dealers sell cars, the automotive retailers mechanically fix them, collision fix them, recycle the parts. They have a motorcycle division now, and they have used car dealers. And they have received some funding from the government of British Columbia to do a certification in electric vehicle education program. And they asked us to be, sit on this alliance thing they're building. They have a project over a year. And they want to get into the industry. And one of the key drivers, one of their key members is the guy who has Precision Automotive in Langley. And Precision Automotive is the leader in the local Greater Vancouver area. They started rebuilding Prius batteries, refurbishing them, and now they've moved into Nissan Leaf batteries. And as the numbers of batteries come available, this is going to happen. I believe this is going to be the next new wave. So this was just came to my attention this week, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But I think there's going to be a whole aftermarket industry building around EVs, because these are the durable vehicles, and we have the brand ambassador to show for it, our 1912 Detroit. So
Kent, on in relation to your discussion about the GoFundMe, I'm thinking at $600,000 at $100 would do you well, rather than one at 10 million or 60 million. I'm just thinking in terms of the Cybertruck and the Model 3 deposits, but in that case, there was this launch event that was pretty spectacular. I think that attracted a lot of interest, the launch event itself. I'm not sure if my thinking is straight on that, but it's like the world went to that point, and Elon Musk, despite his kind of, I don't know, awkward manner on stage, it really attracted a lot of attention. Everybody listened to every word. So I don't know if it's possible. I mean, how do you do it? I don't know the product that you're discussing for your reasons you stated, but package it somewhere, present it somehow. I don't even know where how do you explain what happened to Tesla from your beginnings in the little shop? It's only been, what, 10, 12 years. It's remarkable. So, because you asked the question, would you put the money up? I think, $100 for most of us, it was like, okay, we'll try that. Let's see. And if it blows up and it's nothing, it's only $100. $500, it starts, it's a chunkier check. And then beyond that, and that's coming from me, I was an entrepreneur, I was in business, I handled money, but I never made that much, like I'm fine, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm retired now, sold the bakery, everything is tickety-boo. But it's not like I'm rolling in cash, enough to invest in my house and some other things. And so I don't know, that's how I think. And I think there might be a lot of people who would be interested in kind of putting it into something like what you're talking about, for sure. I think there's millions that would just go, wow, this is spectacular. It's that pushing the button on put the $100 in. That's the gesture you want, right? If you're talking about a fund campaign. A friend of mine was talking about putting a community solar array in the gravel pit down the road here. That was your test track, as we call it.
Exactly.
We turned around and booted it. Remember that? Well, that's all housing getting built in there now. And there's a beautiful sloped hillside that's huge, could hold, I don't know, he wanted to put 5,000 solar panels in there. And even BC Hydro said, oh yeah, no problem. We got the big wires there. We'll just hook it up. And he was going to do a fund me thing. And he had done a research from some course he took over at UVic. He's a retired civil engineer. He couldn't believe the positive response that people made to the idea of a crowdfunding idea. Something like 80 or 78% of the people surveyed said that they would put money in to such a thing. But that's very tangible. I'm not sure what the reward was, but that's a very tangible thing, so they can imagine it quite simply. Didn't happen because the developer just went, what? Like you said, they don't believe it.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't even want to talk about it. It's weird. It's just weird.
Well,
they want to sell houses, but they don't see how that thing being there would actually sell their houses for a higher price.
If I can jump in here again, the city of New Westminster runs its own power company because New Westminster sort of got there before anybody else. So if you live in New Westminster, you buy your electricity from the city of New Westminster, who gets its power from BC Hydro. The city of New Westminster came up with the idea that they were going to put solar panels on the top of one of their buildings. They were also going to put solar panels on the top of their public works yard. Bill MacArthur, who is a member of the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association and does a job working for, I think, Pure Later Courier, so he's not making a lot of money and he's doing manual labor, saw that this was a good idea because he drives an electric smart car. So he's bought something in the neighborhood of 20 of these panels so that the city of New Westminster could put them on the roof. And what the city of New Westminster does is they give him a check every 6 months for the power that's generated. And that's how he's getting paid back, because he buys all his power from the city of New Westminster. Now, what a brilliant idea. But somehow the city of New Westminster got people like Bill turned on to the idea. And he probably wrote them a check for close to $20,000 for all the panels he owns that have been installed on these various rooftops. So there's an idea of how you're going to get people to come up with some serious money. That was the benefit he got, reduction in his power bill ad infinitum. But hey, it's probably going to take Bill to get 30 years to pay this back. And I think Bill's probably close to 45 or something. So he may never get a payback.
Just like the people that bought electric cars a whole bunch of years ago, right?
Oh yeah, you're looking, I got 2 Teslas in my driveway, and you look at the money we've paid on those 2 Teslas, we probably got close to $300,000 worth of cars sitting in the driveway right now. And when I sold my first Tesla that I paid $122,000 for, I got 70 grand for it. So there's $50,000 in the toilet. But I had a great car experience from 2014 to 2017, and I still love Tesla cars.
And your story about going across Canada for $10 worth of gas or whatever is priceless.
Well, yeah, it actually, what it really cost me was $6 in a Edmonton to park at the Edmonton hotel there. And if I put $30 worth of gas in somebody's car in Woodstock, because he was the electrician at Woodstock, New Brunswick, Sarksfield Electrical, he loaned me his truck to go on 2 occasions. So I said to Susan, hey, I'll fill his car. She says, no, you won't. You give him $20. I said, I'll give him 30. So $30 in his truck was a quarter of a tank of gas. It was just a joke. But yeah, it was a cheap trip. We went all the way from where we live to Halifax, Nova Scotia, through PEI, and on the way back, And it really, I made a point of stopping at charging stations. Thank you very much, Kent, for your free charging stations. And it cost me nothing to drive back for charging stations.
Yeah. Is James Locke, are you still kicking around on the line here?
You
bet.
James?
I'm still here.
Yeah. Hey, James, do you have anything to pitch in at this time? I think we're getting close to the end of our meeting, are we?
Yeah, we've hit the 2-hour mark.
Yeah. So I don't know, James, did you want to add to this in some way? Well, if Kent's going to go across the country, he's going to start in Saskatoon and end up at your house. So
yeah, right. No, I mean, Lisa and I have been talking about it and listening to everybody, and it's just to answer one of Kent's questions there. I think the biggest thing is for people to contribute. If you talk, not the people in this room, if you're talking about my family, for example, would they kick in money to such a project? They have to see something. If you don't want to show them the magic of how it's done, which I understand the reasoning why, you've got to show them the benefit of why they're going to give you the hard-earned money. So like Dave was saying there, you got to show them some result of something tangible that they can see that money helps. Kind of like the idea of buying the solar panels so that you get a check back. That's something tangible that they can see the result of that investment in the idea. So that's going to be by far the biggest thing to figure out is something tangible to show them. And you and I have had conversations on this privately, Ken, and you've just got to show them that. And you had an idea, and I don't want to give away anything. So, you know, something like that, or some idea to visually show that investor, that's basically what you're looking for, an individual investor in an idea on what that money does. And if you want them to continually contribute small amounts every month or whatever, or a big lump sum or whatever a person can handle, that's really what you're going to have to do to convince, like for my example, my brother to think about doing that, who is in Alberta, in Calgary. His wife works with a pipeline company, and my brother works for, you know, an automotive company fixing gas cars. So if you want to convince him, that's what it's going to come to. But you know, like the people in this room will all give the money out knowing that it's going to good.
Well, and
without
also,
the proof.
if it involves any kind of new technology or something that's not already known to people, you don't have to give away the IP, but you somehow have to make sure that explain it so that people don't think it's, I don't know, magic or something. You have to, because people are going to look it up. They'll be like, well, I would too. I look it up, like, I wonder how he's doing this. I may not get the right answer, but at least I know where the technology is coming from.
But it is magic.
Yeah. And that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
But it can't be
unicorns. Another thing that works very well in raising money for charities and Rotary clubs and so on is the concept that your money is being doubled. So if you can have two supporters, whether it's maybe Bill Gates and Elon Musk, who have both bought into this concept, and that anything I give will be doubled by one and then doubled by the other, so that anything I give is going up 4 times. That will help, and you might get EV club members all over the continent buying in if you've got two very key leaders, such as Bill Gates and Elon, that will double our money that we're going to give. So if I'm going to give you $200 and I know that's going to go to 800 through Bill and Elon, now that's exciting. So I think two key people of that type who bought into your concept would really encourage us all, because we'll get doubled and doubled.
That's the other idea, for sure.
And Ken, I'm surprised you haven't talked to the province of Saskatchewan, because they love throwing billions of dollars at things that capture carbon.
Well, I can't really show my hand, right? So, but you know, in regards to you know, all the things that we've done, right? Like they've sort of all been a bit crazy, but the key is they've actually worked, right? Because before we announce something crazy, we make sure it's possible. So the credibility side is one that we need to keep building. But also in regards to, like, you know, it's about in regards to the city project and very fast scalable, you know, rollout of cities around the world needs to have a lot more credibility applied to it before. So that's really, you know, this is a stepping stone, this project to that. But the goal is if the funds keep coming in on the crowdfund, we'll have it on numerous continents with in very short order, because we do need to move quickly, right? So, we're prepared for that. Because at the end of the day, if we can have zero emission transportation around the world, well, carbon negative actually, that can be throttled, and we have then we can actually have zero emission or carbon negative cities. So but to come out with a carbon neutral city right out of the gate is a bit much. So that's why this project needs to go first.
Cool.
How about connecting with, like you're connecting with EV clubs here, Vancouver, Victoria, and Saskatchewan? What about the Tesla Club and using the various other EV clubs that we have connections to, and especially through James, to get this message out to those people who would be in, one would think, an automatic or a pretty interested group who would be willing to toss in $100 or whatever it is you're looking for. If you go for $100, as Dave says, you have to ask the wife. So,
you mean to tell me that there's more EV clubs than the ones on the?
Yeah, right.
I thought there's only Vancouver and Saskatoon. There's Saskatchewan. Yeah, no, I totally agree, Don. Mm-hmm. Yep,
the biggest thing is with the clubs, and you're right. And it wouldn't be a hard sell to the clubs, especially the Tesla owners clubs, but they will ask questions. Right. They will want to know how it's done, because everyone that's part of these clubs likes the details, likes to know more about the tech. I mean, we're all nerds at heart, right? Nerds. So that's by far your biggest, you'll get those questions definitely from them to kind of get an idea. And if you want me to throw you to the wolves with the Tesla owners clubs, I can certainly do that, but be ready for the questions, because they're going to have them, because they will want to know, and they'll want to pick at it to understand the concept of what you're trying to get across. Yeah. But no, and they will definitely have those questions for you.
Yeah, and I'll have answers for them. We'll wait till 2021.
If you wanted to have a group of people that would just love to throw money out someplace, find the group of people that donate money to charity. Tell them this is a charity. Get yourself as a registered charity. Tell them it's for whatever, and they'll throw money at you without asking questions. Mm-hmm. I'm only half serious with that comment, but
right. Well, part of it is, to be honest, I'd rather have 1 billion people at $1 around the world than 10 people with 1 billion each, right? Like, I really want this to resonate in as many homes around the world as possible, right? So I've been very cautious not to, categorize it too much, right? Because, I want kids to actually think that they've actually changed the world. And if it's $1, and they've changed the world,
exactly.
What do you think that kid's going to do for the next 50, 60, 70, 80 years of their life if they've already changed the world when they were 7?
Just thinking, you might be better off starting, I don't know, in a third world somewhere. You have this carbon solution, something magic. Then all the folks over here in the developed world can say, oh, here's $100. That sounds like a really nice thing to go on in Kenya or something. I know it sounds a bit cynical, but I'm almost thinking there's something in that. And then you may even find an amenable place to implement this. We are so locked into bureaucracy and regulations and the way things are done in consumerism in North America in particular, probably Europe fits that too, that it's almost seized, petrified in this strange game. There's an organization in Ontario that is a credit union who now, if you watch this video about their programs to help girls go to school in Kenya, they just, every time you watch the video, somebody watches the video, $100 gets sent to this organization in Kenya that's doing this schooling for girls, which is a real weird twist on the whole thing I haven't thought of before. So they're obviously just willing to put up the money. It's kind of, I guess they work like with this NGO.
Yeah,
just a thought.
And my comment earlier was kind of flippant, but he's hit the nail on the head. There's lots of people that are willing to donate money to quote unquote third world countries for projects that benefit the people in those third world countries. There was somebody who came up with the idea of putting solar panels on the roof of buildings in Africa, of these village buildings. And the solar panels were charging batteries, and the batteries were running LED lights, and the students could study at night and do their homework because they had LED lighting. And there was one kid in Africa who came up with the idea that he was getting his battery charged in different towns. Then he discovered solar panels, and now he was charging batteries, and they now sort of replicated that. And they did one step further. Somebody came up with the idea that if you had batteries and LED lights, it would keep the lions out of the village because they didn't want to go in the village that was illuminated.
Right.
So there's all these ideas that people have done already that work.
Well, David, I was just wondering if you could make those really, really amazing desserts, and you made 1 billion of them. If we could sell them each for $1, then we're there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. That's a great idea.
Something else that you mentioned, students at one point there. If you could tie into Greta's network and have students given $1 or $5 or something like that, I mean, that's a massive, massive network right across the world, not just in Sweden or in Canada. And there's a huge number of kids that are involved in that. And to link into that, you go through all the high schools, and it's a potential very large source of millions of people.
Well, Ken, I think this has been a great conversation. Sounds like it could go on for a while, but short of actually sending you a $20 bill over the wire somehow, I'm not sure where it would all end. Anyway, I think we should wrap this up now. I'm really pleased with having everybody online. It was great to have the folks from Saskatchewan, Kent, of course, for all this effort, and the people that show up. Oftentimes, I don't even know half of you. So the Vancouver gang, welcome, and looking forward to seeing you again. Eric, our young youth club member, thanks for hanging in there with us. And I also noticed Heather Kellington, our treasurer, was here also online. I didn't get to introduce her at the start. And for the rest of you regulars, we'll look forward to the next one. Any last comments from anyone?
I just want to say thank you to everyone, and it's been great seeing everyone and having the discussion. I mean, we could probably sit here and talk until night about this subject. So I know we're all passionate about it. So I want to thank you all for that energy and positive, feedback, and willing to just discuss things like this in an open forum, realizing that no idea is a bad one, and the only way we can come up with them is to talk about it. So I hope to see everyone again. I'm going to make an effort to make sure I'm at these every couple of weeks, and be great to see everyone again. No, sorry, next week. Sorry. Is it every week or every 2 weeks, Dave? Every 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
A couple weeks. And keep the conversations going with family and friends, people online as much as you can.
Got a quick.
Zoom has made such a difference for this. I went to an Ontario meeting last week.
Exactly. And these are important, I think, to continue even when things return to normal. These kind of online discussions across broader communities is important across the country and across the world.
Just a quick one for Kent Rathwell. 306-612-4600. Still work?
Yes.
Good. I'll give you a call in a couple minutes.
Yep. No, that sounds good. And thank you for everybody on the call that's helped me in the last decade, along the way with little pieces here and there. And I appreciate all your feedback. And
right on.
Support.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is one of the best meetings I've attended in a long time. You've done a fantastic job. I'm leaving now. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kent.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
You betcha. Thank you. Cheers.
Dave, is there a way we can follow up on Ken's idea, either through this meeting or this medium?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think we can be in touch with him. I might be wrong, but I think James communicates with him on about a monthly basis, roughly, through our network across the country. I'll try to, we'll put more information.
I'm in contact with Kent all the time, so I can, yeah, for sure, we can keep in touch.
Okay, James, maybe we can somehow too update people off, like on the email updates that Jim puts out, even if it's just a little blurb kind of.
Sure, I'll reach out to Kent and see if we can do something like that and give updates on what's going on, his progress, and if he needs, for sure.
And did the other Eric gain anything from this meeting? Push your space bar.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to get an insight into an organization like this, and I look forward to joining you guys again 2 weeks from now.
Right on. Good stuff. Thanks, Eric. Hi.
So does anybody know a link for following up on this? I'm a member of the VEVA club, but
VictoriaEV.com. Is that right, guys?
Victoria EV Club.
Yeah, Victoria EV Club.
.com or .ca?
.com, yeah.
VictoriaEVClub.com.
Yes.
Thank you, and thank everybody for their efforts. Very interesting meeting.
Oh, good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Don.
Bye.
Bye.
It's like saying goodbye to all your friends forever. Oh, I don't want to go. Yeah.